I've been waiting to make this video until we got some real uncut gameplay footage showing us how spells will actually work in Hogwarts Legacy, and we finally got that with the gameplay showcase a few weeks ago. So today I'm going to be talking about spells, and more spells. Let's start with essential spells, which are spells that are going to be used in a very specific context. These are spells that Avalanche says that they want us to have on our controller at all times. We were shown a demonstration of an essential spell, and in this case it was none other than the Revelio charm.
Use Revelio right here because there's a little magic going on.
You notice a little something there. Revelio in Wizarding World lore is a charm that reveals concealed objects, messages, invisible things, hidden markings, and even passages. You can see the player cast Revelio here, and it reveals a semi-hidden page from the Hogwarts Field Guide, which are little tidbits of lore that also grant XP. The Field Guide page is flying in the air, and it's transparent and even invisible at times. When the player notices that something seems to be there, they cast Revelio and the hidden object reveals itself. I would imagine that this spell will be used for more than just field guide pages, and hopefully Avalanche gives us some less obvious use cases. To cast an essential spell, if using a controller, you use left on the D-pad. As you can see in this shot, the triangle with the eye in it represents the Revelio charm. I should also mention that in Wizarding World lore, there are other variations for this charm, such as Homenum Revelio, which reveals hidden humans, and Specialis Revelio, which reveals spells performed on objects or potions. We were told that each spell will have its own core use, whether that be for utility, exploration, combat, or all of the above, but we'll also be able to advance, grow, and change these spells through the game's talent system. Perhaps Homenum and Specialis Revelio will be upgrades to the core Revelio charm. Now my guess is that these essential type spells are going to be non-combat spells, and much more environmental utility based. Using the D-pad requires you to take your left thumb off of your left movement joystick, which is not ideal to do in a combat situation. At one point in the showcase, the player passes a door, and you can see that this door is closed and is labeled as a level 1 lock. This basically confirms that the already pretty much guaranteed Alohomora charm will be in the game. Alohomora is an unlocking charm that unlocks objects such as doors and windows. I could see a spell like this also being one of these essential spells. Moving on from essential spells and potential essential spells, let's take a look at the spell diamond, which can be seen in the bottom right of the screen. So the spells on the spell diamond are what Avalanche is calling your slottable spells, and we're told that there will be over 20 of these slottable spells in the game. Slottable spells can be activated by holding down R2 and then pressing triangle, square, X, or circle. Many of these spells will be used in combat situations, of course, but I wouldn't quite call them all combat spells, and you'll see why here in a moment. There are going to be more spell diamonds that we can access, so we're not just stuck with 4 slots. It sounds like we're going to have access to 4 separate spell diamonds that we can cycle through by holding down R2 and then hitting right on the D-pad. This will give us almost instant access to 16 ready-to-go spells. With over 20 plus slottable spells in the game, it looks like we're going to have to leave a few spells off of the spell diamonds. To actually slot spells, that can be done by hitting just right on the D-pad to bring up that interface. Many of these slottable spells will have cooldowns, as you can see this spell on the bottom of the diamond, which is Accio. After being used in combat, it goes on around an 8-ish second cooldown. Another thing that you'll notice on the spell diamond is that spells are color-coded. We have red, which is likely for offensive type spells. Purple is likely force type spells, yellow for control spells, and then for the light blue spells, we don't exactly know yet, but considering that Lumos is one of them, perhaps these are your utility spells that don't necessarily have a specific one-click interaction with an object in the environment like Revelio does. Your spell's color is also an indicator of what type of spell you may need to cast to break through an opponent's shield. As you can see, shields have colors that match the color categories on your spell diamond, but more on that later in the video. Before we get into the individual slottable spells though, let's talk about a spell that is not an essential or slottable spell, and that is what Avalanche is calling your basic attack. This basic red missile-like attack can be shot off by tapping R2, and it does not have a cooldown. As you can see, the player is firing off 3 or 4 of them in a row. Now there is a spell that was very common in some of the Harry Potter video games called Flipendo.
Flipendo! Flipendo! Flipendo!
But the interesting thing is that Flipendo is never specifically mentioned in the books or movies, but there does seem to be evidence of a spell of its nature being used. It seems likely that this basic attack is actually that Flipendo spell. Now it's also possible that this basic attack could be Stupify, maybe a lower tier version of that spell, as it doesn't seem to stun or knock its target unconscious. But they mentioned Stupify later in the gameplay showcase for counterattacks, so I'm not sure why you wouldn't just call the basic attack Stupify if it actually was. Going back to the spell diamond, which we access by holding down R2, the spell on the top with the feather icon is the famous Wingardium Leviosa, but wait, it's actually not, as it's spelled Levioso. Leviosa is the levitation charm used to make objects fly or levitate, and you can move them around in the air. Levioso also makes objects, or in this case humans, levitate, but without the ability to move them around. These two variations may even share the same spell icon, but perhaps when you're in combat, you can only use Levioso, and when you're interacting with objects, the incantation may change to Leviosa. So once the player casts Levioso, which they have slotted on the triangle button when holding down R2, the target is forced to levitate in the air. After casting Levioso, the player then fires off 4 basic attacks, giving them a successful combo. If you are enjoying this video though, and you don't mind hitting that like button, I do greatly appreciate it, and consider subscribing if you're looking for more in-depth Hogwarts Legacy content or RPG content in general. Speaking of combos, combos do seem to have a really significant use, as doing them successfully in combat builds up these bars that you see above the green health bar. Most, including myself, are speculating that this has something to do with ancient magic, and when you successfully fill up the meters or meter with combos, you may then get to use some ancient magic spells. A huge part of the narrative of this game is our character having an unusual connection to ancient magic that most others don't have. The way that I'm looking at this as of now is as if it's your ultimate meter, a finishing move of some sorts. I did notice that at the start of combat, it doesn't look like the meter on the right is able to build up until the player gets a 10x combo, which then the icon to the right temporarily lights up, and combos after that seem to then start building up the meter. We'll have to wait to see more on this, but it seems like this powerful lightning spell that we got to see in the gameplay reveal is one of these ultimate ancient magic spells.
Magic your professors do not understand to obliterate your strongest foes.
In this spell, where the player is repeatedly slamming this goblin on the ground, is some sort of finisher. Back to the spell diamond, the spell on the left is the famous light creation spell called Lumos. Casting Lumos will of course light up the end of your wand, which can be especially useful in dark environments, but it can also reveal hidden illusions and things of that nature. We can see the player cast it right here, and you notice that it does not have a cooldown. Initially I was thinking that Lumos could perhaps be one of the essential spells in the game, as it's definitely more utility based. But I think the essential spells may be spells that actually interact with a specific object in the environment with one simple click of the D-pad, and Lumos does of course affect the environment, but it doesn't specifically interact with a particular object, and I think the spell is going to require a little bit more engagement on the part of the joysticks. We also may need Lumos in combat situations, such as for spiders in the Forbidden Forest, so it's making more sense to me now that it's actually a slottable spell. The spell at the bottom of the diamond is Accio. Accio is a summoning charm that summons an object towards the caster. We can see it being used out of combat right here, where the player summons a flying field guide page to them.
Here's another collectible page, you know, just again showing you like just these things around Hogwarts.
The interesting thing here is that there wasn't really a cooldown for its use in this particular case. But when used in combat, you'll notice that it does have a cooldown similar to what Levioso had. So you can use Accio to pull targets towards you or call inanimate objects to you like Harry Potter did in the Goblet of Fire with Accio Firebolt. Now the opposite, or should I say counter charm to Accio, is the banishing charm called Depulso. While Accio summons objects to the caster, Depulso banishes them or sends them away from the caster. We did get a glimpse of some other spell icons on different spell diamonds, and considering that Accio looks like this with the hand pulling an object in, it seems like this spell icon has a good chance of being Depulso. take a look at this clip and tell me it doesn't look like the Banishing Charm, the opposite of Accio. Other spell icons that we got to see include these 3 red ones. If you have any guesses as to what they are, let everyone know in the comments below. One popular spell that we haven't talked about much yet is Stupify, and Stupify is confirmed to be in the game, as we know it can be part of the counterattack mechanic. So Stupify is a stun charm that stuns its target, rendering them unconscious. One of these red icons could certainly be Stupify. I should also bring up the Expelliarmus spell, which is a disarming charm that forces its target to drop whatever they're holding in their hands, most famously used in the books and movies when you see a witch or wizard whose wand goes flying out of their hands. And we got to see this spell in action, followed up by an Apugno in this clip. This unknown yellow icon shows a hand in what seems to be a stop position. I'd say this spell could be one of several spells. It could be Arresto Momentum, which slows the velocity of an object. It could be Immobilis, which is a freezing charm that stops the actions of a target living or animated. It could be Impedimenta, which is a jinx that slows its target for a short period of time. Or it could even be Petrificus Totalis, the full body bind curse that temporarily paralyzes its target. We did get a glimpse of Petrificus Totalis in action in this scene. Since I just mentioned counterattacks a few moments ago, this is a great time to talk about defense, and that brings us to Protego, the shield charm. So Protego conjures up a strong magical protection barrier, as you can see in the gameplay. I think most, if not all, of these shields that you see around these wizards and witches are Protego shields. And to break through these shields, you have to cast a spell that's color corresponds with the opponent's shield color. So if the opponent has a purple Protego shield, you need to cast a purple force spell, such as Accio or Depulso, to help you quickly break through that shield. Your character also has the ability to deflect attacks and even do a counterattack. When you see this halo on your character's head, the halo indicates an incoming attack, and if you press triangle right when the spell comes in and you get the timing right, you can deflect that spell. You can also hold triangle, and I'm assuming that you have to get the timing right for this as well, and if you do this correctly, you will not only deflect the incoming attack, but you'll also follow up with a counterattack, Stupify, stunning your opponent. Before I get into the 3 deadly curses, I'm going to rapid fire off a few more spells that we saw and spells that we may have seen in the previous trailers. Incendio is the fire-making charm that can be used to conjure a jet of flame, setting targets alight. Confringo is the blasting curse that causes a target to blow up, but there's also a spell called Bombarda, which is the exploding charm that detonates its target in a small explosion. It seems like this fire one is Confringo, and this one right here may be Bombarda. Diffindo is the severing charm used to make precise, accurate cuts, which we got to see right here. Apugno is a spell that directs an object to attack your victim. We saw this spell quite a lot when you see barrels go flying at enemies. Descendo is a charm that makes objects fall or move downwards, and you can even slam enemies down with it. Glacius is the freezing spell that freezes targets with icy cold air created from the tip of the wand. Reparo is a mending charm that repairs broken objects. We didn't get to see the player using Reparo, but we did see Professor Fig using it to repair this massive broken stone bridge in this scene. I'm not sure if we saw this spell, but the opposite of Reparo is kinda Reducto, which is a curse that blasts solid objects to pieces. The Disillusionment charm disguises its target and its surroundings by making it take on the exact color and texture of its environment. It's a very chameleon, predator-like spell. Alright, we finally made it to the final section of the video. I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit, so bear with me. And this section is going to be about the 3 unforgivable curses: Avada, Kadvra, Crucio, and Imperio. All 3 of these horrific dark arts spells are confirmed to be in the game, and it seems like we're going to have the choice to learn them. But the extent of our ability to actually use these curses, we're not entirely sure yet. We do know that there will be talents for the dark arts specifically, but note that dark arts encompasses more than just the 3 unforgivable curses. Generally speaking, the use of any of these 3 curses on a fellow human being will earn you a life sentence to the extremely harsh prison known as Azkaban. We do see Azkaban in one of the trailers, so perhaps those of you who pursue this dark path may eventually find yourself behind bars having your soul sucked out by Dementors. So Avada Kedavra is the famed killing curse. the curse that Voldemort casts on Harry and his parents later on in the 20th century. This curse, when cast successfully on a living creature or person, causes instantaneous death. And Harry, due to his mother's love and sacrifice, is the only one known to have survived it. But keep in mind, Harry on the Hogwarts Legacy timeline wasn't even close to being born yet. We actually got to see a scene of the player character casting Avada Kedavra on a goblin.
Avada Kedavra!
The Cruciatus Curse, which has the incantation of Crucio, is also known as the Torture Curse. This curse, when cast successfully on a creature, inflicts intense, excruciating physical pain. If a victim is subjected to it for a prolonged period of time, it can even result in insanity. In the Dark Arts trailer, we see the player presented with the choice to learn the curse and cast it on Sebastian, learn the curse but have Sebastian cast it on themselves, or not learn it at all. And the third unforgivable curse is the Imperious Curse, which has the incantation of Imperio, and when cast successfully on a living creature or human, the curse places its victim completely under the control of the caster. It's a mind control curse. In this Hogwarts Legacy tweet, it says, temporarily forces enemies to fight as if they were your companion. While under your control, they take reduced damage from other enemies to prolong their allegiance to you. Also curses the victim, and cursed enemies take extra damage. Now, this curse in Wizarding World lore can actually be resisted in some cases by those with exceptional strength of will, but we'll have to wait to see more on this for Hogwarts Legacy. Thank you so much for watching this rather long video, and hopefully my voice depleting in front of your very own eyes wasn't too unbearable to listen to. Much more Hogwarts Legacy content to come, and I'll catch you all on the next one.